Hey guys, and welcome back to the 315 Sports Podcast. Today we are joined by Mateo Santos. He just had a birthday. Say hello.
What's going on?
Yes, Teo.
Today's topic for us to speak about will be Mount Rushmores of the NBA. So everyone got six teams except Steve. Steve got seven. And we will be giving you our top four players whoever played for the franchise. But we kind of looked at it. They had to play it, either had a serious impact on their year or 2 years on the team, or played on that team for a while and had a very big impact. So we're going to start with Mateo. He'll give you his first team, and then he'll list off his four players. We're going to try and limit it to about a minute to a minute and a half to give us your four players, just so kind of go through this pretty quickly.
All right, so I got the Nets first. And my four players are simply just Richard Jefferson, Julius Erving, Vince Carter, and Jason Kidd. The thing I was iffy about was either adding Brook Lopez to this lineup, but you look at Brook Lopez's 9-year career in this, and he has 2 winning seasons on the shittiest Nets team ever created. So I felt like his impact wasn't too valuable to add on this list. Everybody else is pretty self-explanatory. Dr. J went off in his 3 years. Vince Carter, he brought the swagger to the Nets that the years he played. And then Jason Kidd, completely dominated, around him during his years. Not much to say about that, but
the Nets are kind of a boring franchise, to say the least.
Wow, yeah.
Nothing's good comes out of it.
But that list is pretty solid.
Yeah,
not much to argue there. Yeah.
And plus what they have now with Katie and Kyrie.
Exactly.
Turn it into anything, but
those, they will be added in the near future, but you can't.
Yeah.
True.
All right, for my first team, I had the Nuggets. First player I put was Alex English. Second player was our own Carmelo Anthony. Third was David Thompson. And fourth was Dikembe Mutombo. Alex English played 10 years in Denver, 26 points per game. He scored over 21,000 points between 1980 and 1990, which was the most in that 10-year span. And pretty impressive when you had all-time greats like Magic and Bird and all them and MJ playing. So then obviously we have Carmelo, drafted third overall, played for the Nuggets for 8 seasons. Went to the Western Conference Finals in 2009. He's third all-time in Nuggets scoring. Made the all-rookie first team. He was a 4-time All-Star and made a second and a third-team All-NBA when he was there. David Thompson, he was drafted to the Nuggets in the last year of the ABA, in which he won Rookie of the Year. And then as well, when they moved to the NBA, he made All-NBA second team and won All-Star Game MVP, and then made 2 All-NBA first teams later in his career. And last, I have Dikembe Mutombo. Only played 5 years in Denver, but I valued it as that he was drafted there, so it kind of meant a little more. In 5 years, he had over 5,000 rebounds and over 1,500 blocks, made all-rookie first team, and won the Defensive Player of the Year in 1995.
He's pretty solid. Compared to other teams, it's not as good, but
yeah,
I agree with the guys you have.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I have the most successful organization in basketball history, the Boston Celtics. And it was kind of tough to limit it to 4. Like me and Gib said yesterday when talking about this podcast, you could have 4 guys just from the team that won 11 rings. I only decided to have 1 from that team. I'm going to start off with my 4 guys. First is Larry Bird, greatest white basketball player of all time, 3-time champ, 3-time MVP in the greatest era of basketball ever, has took down the Bad Boy Pistons, never lost to Michael Jordan in a playoff game, 3 straight MVPs, won in 81, 84, 86. You never see anymore from an all-time great in their second year in their career to win a championship as the best player in their team, undoubtedly. Bird went off in that playoffs. I don't think anyone was within 8 points per game of him. Just so dominant. Bill Russell, winningest player in basketball history, 11 rings. One of the best defenders and rebounders of all time. He had to be on this list. He has to be in everybody's top 10 out of respect for the fact that everyone can say that the competition was lower than, which is completely true, but he dominated. So you can't take it away from him because he's one of the greatest winners in athletic history. Paul Pierce, the truth. People don't understand. Everybody remembers the big three. I want to talk about the Paul Pierce that in around the mid-2000s took a Celtics team with the second best players, Antoine Walker, who was later in his career, to the Eastern Conference Finals. Now, that's something people don't talk about a lot. That's something that Melo struggled to do in New York when he was in New York. He was a great player, but everybody thinks Paul Pierce. Oh, he has one ring, but he was, I'll tell you, Paul Pierce is a Celtics was a hell of a player. He accomplished a lot with not so much on his roster. He finally got help. He won the championship he deserved. He got nothing but love for the truth. Last one, I was between two guys, but I'm going to go Kevin McHale. Top 5 power forward of all time, fundamentally sound. The wingman to him, Larry Bird, Robert Parrish, greatest front court of all time. Great power forward. So he got the job done. There are nights Bird would be doubled to triple teamed. He can still get put up for 28 for 30. McHale's just a hell of a player, and he's done a lot of his time for Boston. So that was my 4.
Am I up, Tim?
Yeah.
All right. The first team I have is the Portland Trailblazers. The first guy I have is Bill Walton, who would have been the greatest Trailblazer of all time if he didn't get hurt in Portland, but he won them their only championship. I think it might have even been his rookie year. He won the championship. But his best years were definitely in Portland, and then he, won a couple more championships with the Celtics. Next guy is Damian Lillard, who's probably the greatest modern-day Trailblazer. He's brought the Trailblazers to the Western Conference Finals in the West now, which is unbelievable with pretty much little to no help outside of C.J. McCollum since he's been there. The next guy on my list I have is Clyde Drexler, who was the best Blazer during the Jordan, Bird, Magic era. And then the last guy on my list is Brandon Roy. Probably would have been, if it wasn't for he played 6 years in the NBA, was a 3-time All-Star, got hurt and retired at the age of 28. And when he was in Portland for the 3 straight years he made the All-Star game, he averaged over 22 points a game and probably goes down as one of the biggest what-if stories in NBA history if he never got hurt. So that's the Portland Trailblazers.
For sure. Brandon Roy was a bucket, and we don't really – that's probably the only time I ever talk about him on the podcast unless we have some other video of what-ifs. But he was, like a Kevin Garnett, KD type player. He just great mid-range game, take it to the rack. But you don't talk about him unless you talk about, what-ifs because his career was so short-ended.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
My first team is the actual most accomplished franchise in basketball history. That is the Orlando Magic. First on my list is Shaq. Shaq obviously has played basically everywhere, but he played 4 seasons with the Magic, averaged 27 and 12. Next on my list is Penny Hardaway. I think that's an obvious. Then I got Dwight Howard, who his best years were definitely in Orlando. He played 8 seasons there, averaged 18 and 13. Dude was a beast. Then I got T-Mac, who played 4 seasons in Orlando as well. T-Mac averaged 28 points per game over those four seasons, and in 2 of those seasons, he led the league in scoring.
Orlando, man, just, people don't talk about enough. Just one thing I had about Orlando is when Shaq was on Orlando in the beginning of the Lakers, there were times Shaq would rebound the ball and take it to the rack. Like, he would take it the length of the court. And that's something you don't really see from big men. Like, Jokic can handle the ball, but he's not going to take a full head of steam and take it to the rack because nobody's stopping, big Shaq daddy then. But I just and highly recommend the I think it's called This Magic Moment, 30 for 30.
30 for 30. Yeah, I watched it. That's a really good 30 for 30.
Very good one, yeah. Highly recommend.
It's funny because Shaq's going to come up on another one of my teams soon. So
yeah, you should be on a few.
Mm-hmm.
All right, you're up with your second team, too.
All right, so my second team, I got the Bucks. There's a lot of people I could choose here, but I went off first by saying Ray Allen. Ray Allen kind of started his career off with the Bucks. After his rookie season, he averaged 14 points a game, and then just all around he was just an offensive weapon. He's all time in 3 points, 3-point goals, for threes, and he has just the most made threes in a game or in a season, which is 229 for the Bucks. I mean, he just finished his career off with the Bucks with just incredible numbers, and I mean, honestly, he continues to play with any other team in the future, and he still dominates. He's gonna come back up in one of my other teams. Number 3, or my second one, I got Oscar Robertson, Big O. I mean, he was with the Bucks like later in his career, but he helped the Bucks go to their championship in 1971. He basically was like a lethal duo with Kareem, which for number 2, I got Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. He spent 5 years with the Bucks, and I guess he's just one of the greatest centers to ever play. He led that team to the championship in 1971. He averaged about 30 points a game, 15 boards for the Bucks in his time, and I mean, it's just complete dominance. You don't really see anything like it now. And my number 1, or my last one, is obviously Giannis Antetokounmpo. Clear top 3 modern player of today. He's 7 years and going with the Bucks. I can't really say too much. He's just an all-around incredible player, arguably the best in the game. I mean, there's only room to improve for him. So, yeah, I guess it's just those are my 4.
Yeah, I agree with that list. I think there were some guys in that 70s team, but the thing is, like, Giannis is 10 times the player that Sidney Moncrief is or ever was, and like guys like that. So, I think that's the best list, because I saw some other Mount Rushmore's had like somebody else for Giannis, but Giannis is already better than the other players that would have been honest. So I agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I had the Clippers as my next team. This was a fun team to do just because, I mean, obviously you can't include Kawhi because he hasn't really done anything yet. So my first guy was, of course, Chris Paul. He was traded there from the Hornets or Pelicans, whatever you want to call them. In 6 seasons with the Clippers, he averaged a double-double, 19, 10 assists. While leading deep playoff runs, he hit that shot against the Spurs, which we later know led to an injury. Or he played that whole series, I believe, or game with an injury, and then ended up missing the next playoff series. So that Clippers team, it was fun to watch. They never won a championship, which is why they aren't considered like an all-time great team. He was during his time with the Clippers, 5 All-Star games, 3 times first all-team first NBA, and 2 times second team. And then in 2013, won the All-Star Game MVP. Next guy, Elton Brand, played 7 seasons, but he missed his last season. So he basically played 6, 20 and 10. He was an MVP candidate in 2005 when he led him to the semifinals. Third guy is an older kind of guy, Bob McAdoo. He played for them when they were the Buffalo Braves. And in his first 3 seasons, he won 3 straight scoring titles, won an MVP, made first and second team All-NBA any of the years, and he was named Rookie of the Year. And then in one of his seasons in 1974, he averaged 34 and 14 boards a game. My last guy is Blake Griffin, probably one of the debatable players that they could be on the Mount Rushmore, but only played for them for a short amount of time, but he won the Rookie of the Year, won the Slam Dunk Contest. He was in 3 All-Star games, started in 2 of them, and he averaged 20 and 10 and 4 assists, and he was part of that fly high Clippers team. So I had to put him on the list.
Yeah, I like that list, Tim. I'm glad you got Bob McAdoo on there. He was a beast. And Bob McAdoo, just to put in perspective for people that haven't watched much 80s basketball, Bob McAdoo went on to play for the Showtime Lakers and come off the bench as a former MVP in the league. Kind of shows how good those teams were when you have a guy that averaged 34 a game once his career, was an MVP coming off the bench. It's crazy. Speaking of the Lakers, that's my next team on this list, and I think this is probably the best Mount Rushmore, along with the team that could have 5 Mount Rushmores. This team, I start us off. I'm going off the guys that have accomplished a lot with the Lakers, not guys that just have made, because Karl Malone in my opinion, which he didn't accomplish a lot with Lakers. He was just on them for a while. Gary Payton, the same thing. LeBron just got there. But here's my Mount Rushmore. I got the greatest Laker of all time, Magic Johnson, 5 rings, dynasty, Showtime Lakers. And I think Magic Johnson, as far as when you go like shooting guards ever, you got best shooting guards ever. You got Jordan and Kobe, and there's and then you got for small forwards, you got LeBron, Bird, KD, Dr. J. I think for Magic Johnson, a point guard, it goes Magic Johnson and then everybody else. I think it's the biggest gap for best position of all time, and that's not debatable in my eyes. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Showtime Lakers, man. Like you said, he could be on any list for any team he played for. With the Bucks, Lakers, he got 5 rings with them in the 80s. He goes down in 81. Magic Johnson plays all 5 positions, drops 41 points in game one, wins the series without him. Kareem definitely deserves to be on this list, though. Most unstoppable offensive force in the 80s for sure. This is probably most people's greatest Laker of all time. As my third guy who absolutely had to be on this list is Kobe Bryant. He was a Laker for life, one of the top 5, 10, probably top 5 scorer of all time, one of the best defenders of all time, definitely one of the best two-way players of all time. Deserves all the respect in the world. And something about Kobe that I really recognize is I take a lot of people, like how players recognize other players, and nobody gets more recognition than Kobe Bryant from other players in the league that played with him against them. A lot of them say they're his GOAT. A lot of them say they're the best player he ever played against. I think I take that with pretty heavy because those are the guys that play in the NBA at this high level. My last guy, most dominant offensive force in the modern day NBA history, Big Shaq Daddy, Shaquille O'Neal, 3-peat in the league, best player in the league at the time, averaging 30-plus in every NBA Finals. There was one NBA Finals where Kobe only averaged 16 a game, the first one they win. Shaq went on to score 38 a game, while not only shooting lesser than 60% from the free throw line, walking double-double, 3 blocks a game. Shaq averaged the most points, rebounds, everything in that series besides assists. So he had one of the most dominant runs in history. So that's my Mount Rushmore for the Lakers, and I think that's probably the best Mount Rushmore.
So the next team I have is the Phoenix Suns. First off, I'm going to start with Steve Nash, back-to-back MVP, head of the 7 second or less Suns. Second best team in the West pretty much behind Kobe's Lakers and even maybe the Spurs, but they fought with the Lakers, it seemed like, every year in the playoffs. Steve Nash is probably one of, if not the best passer of all time. In my opinion, I think he is, even though he's not the assist record leader. I've watched his highlights like more recently just because, he was just awesome. Even though he shammed Kobe in winning that second MVP, which we all know should have went to Kobe. He still won back-to-back MVPs, which isn't done by a lot of people, so he's got to be on there. The next guy on the list is Charles Barkley. Charles Barkley led the Suns, I think, to their only finals appearance in 92-93, and if it wasn't for the fact that he had no one else on his team and had a white guy trying to guard Michael Jordan the whole series, they probably would have won that series. And if, fucking John Paxson doesn't make that shot, they go to Game 7 in Phoenix, which would have been, a bunch of what-ifs. But Charles Barkley's probably one of the most underappreciated superstars in NBA history because he bounced around with so many different teams, and now he's on Inside NBA and TNT, and everyone just makes fun of him because he never won a ring. But that's beside the point. He's probably, if one of the greatest power forwards of all time, definitely one of the best rebounders of all time. The next guy on my list is an interesting one, is Shawn Marion. He averaged 20 and 10 when he was with the Suns, when he played with Steve Nash. Was the second best player on that team because Shaq was an old-ass fat man at the time, but Shaq was still, good. And then the last guy on the list is Kevin Johnson, who was Charles Barkley's second best player when they went to the finals. I think he averaged over 20 points. And because Barkley was there for 4 years, the 3 years that Johnson was there with Barkley, I think he went to 3 All-Star games and averaged over 20 points a game every season he was there.
Next team on my list, Cleveland Cavaliers. First guy I got on my list, pretty obvious, greatest basketball player of all time, LeBron James. 11 seasons with the Cavs, won that championship in 2016, and year after year carried shitty Cavs teams to the playoffs, to the championships. If you don't have LeBron on your list for a Mount Rushmore for the Cleveland Cavaliers or for the greatest, basketball players of all time, you're an idiot. And then I got LeBron's buddy, Kyrie, who was also, part of that 2016 championship team. He played only 6 seasons there, but he was still a beast. Then I got white point guard Mark Price, one of the greatest free throw shooters of all time. He played before LeBron. He was considered probably the greatest Cav of all time. He played 9 seasons with the Cavs and led them to 7 playoff appearances. And then I got Brad Daugherty, who played 8 seasons with the Cavs. Dude was pretty good. Averaged close to 20 points and 10 rebounds throughout those 8 seasons.
Yeah, I think one thing you gotta say with the Cavs team is that if you take LeBron James off this Cavs Mount Rushmore, they probably don't get past the first round of the playoffs. And if he's on that team, they probably make the finals of the East. Well, it's kind of crazy how that works.
All right, it's my third team then. I got the Thunder, but I'm kind of going into the Sonics as well. My first one, I got Ray Allen again. He spent 5 years with the Sonics. It's kind of like his prime year or his prime of his career. He tied the all-time high for the franchise in playoff games. During this time, he averaged 24.6 points, almost 5 rebounds, almost 5 assists, shooting like 44%. I mean, honestly, he just, again, all around offensive threat. My number 3 or my number 2, I have to put him in here. Gary Payton. He spent basically 3.5 years with the Sonics. He has 9 all-defensive first teams, 2 all-NBA teams, 5 all-NBA second teams, 2 all-NBA third teams, and 9 all-star selections. He is all-star. He's the all-time leader in games, minutes, field goals, assists, and steals. He's also part of the 1996 finals team. I mean, at his time, or in this time, he was just absolute monster. Did everything right. My number 2, I got to go with KD. He spent 6 years with the Sonics, and then when they transitioned to the Thunder, he averaged around 20 points a game for his whole career with the franchise. He basically had the most success since like the Payton and Sean Kemp era. Then he led the team to the first final since 1996 and 2012. He had 4 All-Star appearances, Rookie of the Year, and was second in MVP voting 3 times. And then my last one is Russell Westbrook. He spent 11 years with the Thunder. He had 9 All-Star appearances, MVP in 2016, 2017 year. I mean, he just triple-doubles basically towards the end of his career with the Thunder. And, I mean, honestly, he's an all-around – he probably is arguably one of the best Thunder players to ever play there. But, yeah.
Agree with that list.
Yeah, I agree too. My next team is the Mavericks. Starting off with Dirk, 14-time All-Star, 2006, 2007 MVP, and then obviously the NBA championship and the NBA Finals MVP, in which they beat LeBron. Next player I have is Steve Nash. Of course, his best years, or his MVP years at least, were on the Suns. Still averaged 15, 3 rebounds, 7 assists. And it was actually said that he wanted to stay on the Mavs and return, sign a big contract, but Mark Cuban made the mistake in not re-signing him. So instead, their next point guard also made my list, Jason Kidd, was part of that championship team, played for the Mavs for 8 seasons, averaged only 11 points, basically 5 rebounds, but still 8 assists. Good floor general. And then my last guy was Mark Mcgwire. He was very good offensively, which is what he's known for. Averaged 24, 6, and 4, 3 All-Star appearances, and I mean, he won titles with the Pistons, but he's also pretty well known for playing on the Mavericks. So.
Yeah, no, I agree with that list for sure. I think something that just needs to be talked about a little bit more, not necessarily for your thing, but just that 2011 Mavs championship team is better than people think. Just like I just looked it up because I was pretty sure, but I double checked. Dirk averaged 26 a game because he's Dirk. He was, not necessarily in his prime at that point in his career, but he's just making plays. Jason Terry averaged 18 a game. Shawn Marion averaged 14 a game. Tyson Chandler averaged 10 a game. J.J. Byrne averaged 10 a game. You got 6 players in that team that average 5 besides Dirk that average over 10 a game. So that's just a deep roster. So that was a good team. But, yeah, I definitely agree with that list. My next list for my Mount Rushmores is the 76ers. And I think this is an interesting team. My first guy, of course, was also on the Nets one, Dr. J. Some of the people don't realize Dr. J's best days of basketball were in the ABA. But when he did come to the NBA, he changed the game. He was definitely not necessarily the way that Bird and Magic and Jordan did, but he brought a style to the game where he was smooth, he was entertaining. Dr. J, they made a rule because he used to shoot. He's done it before. He used to shoot inbound, like when you inbound the ball from the baseline or the sideline, he would shoot over the basket and score. And he used to do that, and then they made a rule to stop that. So he just found crafty ways to score. He was super entertaining. That's my first guy. In 1983, he's down 2-0 to the Blazers. They come back. He leads them to that title for the Sixers, so definitely deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore. AI, one of the best scorers of all time. Led a poor Sixers team with the best player, Dikembe Mutombo, who had trouble averaging more than 12 points a game. AI led that team to the finals. Well, he averaged 28 a game as a Sixer over the course of 11 seasons, which is pretty impressive to play that long. He averaged 28 a game. Probably the most dominant force in NBA history outside of the modern era. Wilt Chamberlain, 3 straight MVPs as a Sixer, holds a franchise record for 24 rebounds a game as a Sixer. His statistics are completely crazy. And, yes, he did play against lesser competition, but I don't know if we can blame him for that with what he put up. One season averaging over 50 points a game. Wilt Chamberlain used to get criticized because they said he wasn't a good passer. So the following season as a Sixer, he led the league in assists while being 7'1". So I think that's just Wilt Chamberlain could do it all. And he could shoot mid-range jump shots. That was insane. My last guy has to be recognized, probably one of my favorite and most underrated players of all time, Moses Malone. While this was at the end of his career, he helped Dr. J get over the hump with the Sixers, get past a tough, a good Celtics team in the early 80s, and win a title in 83, win the MVPs in 83, probably the best in my argument, best era of basketball, the most Hall of Famers and most top-tier players in basketball history. Moses Malone definitely deserves to be on there, and he's somebody that doesn't get talked about enough when we talk about all basketball all-time greats.
So the next team I have are the Sacramento Kings. The first guy never played for the Kings, but played for the next year. They were in Rochester, New York. That's the Big O, Oscar Robertson. Definitely wasn't as good on the Kings as he was on the Bucks or as recognizable. But I think from what I looked up, he still averaged like over 25 points a game, over 8 assists, and over 8 rebounds when he was there. So, I mean, those are just crazy stats. And then the next guy I have is Mitch Richmond, who him and another guy, Chris Webber, are probably the 2 debatable ones for greatest Sacramento King of all time. Like I said, the next guy I have is Chris Webber, and Webber played on the Kings in the 90s with White Chocolate, Stojakovic, and all those guys, and brought them deep into the playoffs a few times. And the last guy I have on my list is Stojakovic, probably one of the more underappreciated shooters of all time in NBA history. Absolute sniper from all over the court. The team with White Chocolate, Stojakovic, and Webber were a fun team to watch in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And during that time, I mean, when the Kings were good, you hear people talk about it now because the Kings haven't been relevant in like 20 years. But when they were good, they would fill their arena up, and it was one of the harder places to play in the NBA.
C-Web was definitely a fun guy to watch. And he's another big man we don't talk about enough because there's so many good all-time bigs. But he was awesome.
All right, next team on my list is the Houston Rockets. There are a lot of great players for the Rockets all time, so I'm going to do a little honorable mention first. A couple guys that didn't make my list, Yao Ming. Another guy, Clyde Drexler, who just didn't play in Houston long enough. Clyde Drexler is definitely a Portland Trailblazer. So, but first I got Hakeem Olajuwon, who you just have to have on your list. Basically played his entire career in Houston, except for one season. So he played 16 seasons there. Next I got Moses Malone, who played 6 seasons there and averaged 24 and 15. I think you got to put him on your list. And then I think I'm going to put Elvin Hayes on my list. He was first 3 seasons he was playing for the San Diego Rockets, where he was averaging close to 30 points and over 15 rebounds for 3 straight seasons. For 3 seasons every game. So I got to have him. And then I got James Harden. Yes, Steve. I got James Harden on my list. Dude is an absolute bucket. Averaged around like 30 points per game ever since he's been playing for the Rockets, ever since he was traded there from OKC. So, yeah. Steve, I obviously see that you don't like this at all. Now, tell me why.
I respect the Elvin Hayes pick. I was going to bring him up because I thought you wouldn't have him on. But I wouldn't get mad at you for not having him on necessarily because, between him and Harden, the lack of success is something that I don't know if Hakeem could have won without Clyde. I think that was a big role in winning. And when people argue 90s basketball is the toughest era defensively, and if that's true, they won back-to-back titles. So I don't know. They beat a team with Shaq and Penny, and I don't think if Clyde's not there, he doesn't hit those clutch shots in Game 6. I might be in Game 4. I don't know. I don't hate the list. I just think Clyde as a Rocket, while he was better on the Blazers, still I'd take him over Harden just because Harden can't find a way to get to the finals. Like, yes, it's more competitive now, but I think Harden's a better all-time. Like, I think he's a better scorer, but I don't know as far as all-time players and accolades. I still take Clyde, but I don't know. It's all right. I'll forgive you.
I'll still take Harden.
Yeah, then you can get bounced the first round of the playoffs. It's fine.
Clyde only played there for 4 seasons,
And he won 2 rings. So half the time Clyde was on the Rockets,
carried.
he won a ring. He got carried. What did Hakeem win without Clyde? Nothing. I love it that needed him.
All right, go Tab.
All right. My next team, I got the Hornets. For my first player, I had to throw him in there. The smallest human being to ever play the NBA, Muggsy Bogues. He spent 9 years with the Bobcats, Hornets now. I mean, he reminds me a little bit about myself. He wasn't the greatest shooter, but, he found his ways. He's a phenomenal passer. He has a high IQ. He actually is the leader in minutes, assists, steals, and turnovers for them. So I think that's kind of cool to see. My second one is Dell Curry. He spent 10 years with the Hornets. I mean, he's probably one of the better 6 men to ever play in the NBA. He had incredible shooting ability, and he had a clutch factor like no other. I mean, he only averaged about 14 points a game, but I mean, he's still until Kemba came to the Hornets, he was the all-time leader in scoring. My third person is Alonzo Mourning. He only spent 3 years with the Hornets. However, he had 2 All-Star appearances. He averaged 21 points a game, 10 rebounds, and he shot over 50%. I mean, I feel like he had more success with the Heat, but I mean, in his time with the Hornets, it was pretty good. And then my number one is Cardiac Kemba. He spent 8 years with the Hornets before getting traded or before going to the Celtics. He led the Hornets to 2 playoff appearances, even though he was a part of that team that went 6 and whatever. He had 3 All-Star appearances, and he was a starter in his last season with the Hornets in the All-Star game. He averaged over 20 points per game in the last 4 seasons, and I mean, the Hornets are kind of like a boring franchise, but I mean, I guess like these are 4 pretty decent players who play for him.
Yep.
Were you gonna say that?
Oh, you're up. My bad, man. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
All right. My next team is the Chicago Bulls. First guy I have is Scottie Pippen. His career averages on the Bulls were 18, 7, 2 steals a game. Obviously, 6 championships, greatest wingman of all time. Rodman didn't make my list, but we could talk about that if we'd like. My next guy is Artis Gilmore. Shot 60% from the field on 20 points, 11 boards, and was very well known for his defense, in which he made 4 defensive teams and then also made 4 all-star teams. Next guy I have is Derrick Rose. As a Bull, averaged 27 and 4, youngest MVP ever, won Rookie of the Year, and the biggest what if of all time. And I think he would have been maybe the second best Bull of all time if he played his full career, fully healthy. Last guy I have, obviously, my GOAT, Michael Jordan. As Bull, averaged 31.5, 5, 6 boards, 6 rings, 6 finals MVPs, and all that jazz. We know how it went. So I'm pretty easy.
I agree with that list. I think something this documentary is doing is kind of skewing the truth about Dennis Rodman. I love Dennis Rodman. He was somebody that could have easily made my next team's list in the Pistons, but he's not. He was a great guy to have on the court, and he does a lot for every team. Like people talk about how Draymond Green's glue, but if Draymond Green left the Warriors, they'd still be winning. Dennis Rodman was key to winning. He just did not contribute a lot as far as scoring. He's the lowest scoring Hall of Famer of all time, but he definitely deserves some respect. But I agree with your list. Artis Gilmore is 10 times a player Dennis Rodman ever was. So that's 100% true. My next team is the Pistons. This was a team I really wanted to do because the Bad Boys are one of my favorite teams ever. Isaiah Thomas, probably the second or third, depending where you put Oscar Robertson, best point guard of all time. Isaiah Thomas, first guy on my team. If you look at the teams Isaiah Thomas has beaten in his career in the playoffs, you look at slowing down to Michael Jordan averaging close to 40 a game back-to-back years. You look at ending the Magic Lakers dynasty when Kareem got too old and beating the Lakers in the finals. Impressive. You look at taking advantage of a Celtics team where Larry Bird was later in his career and wasn't the player he used to be, beating them in the Garden. And then people forget the Celtics walked out on the Pistons before the Pistons walked out on the Bulls. So Michael Jordan can still whine about it, but other teams have done it before. So that's just the truth. The documentary won't tell you. Next guy I got Joe Dumars, one of the best two-way players of all time, All-NBA, arguably the best player on the second championship, the back-to-back when the Pistons won. Just an absolute stud. On my opinion, one of the top shooting guards of all time. And I really loved his game. Now, here's another guy they could say is kind of like Dennis Rodman in the sense, but he's a little bit different game. Ben Wallace, 2004 best player on that team. Just a freaking, he was just a beast, the paint man. He wasn't a high-volume scorer, but he was probably one of the best defenders of all time and definitely one of the best defending big men in the modern era. It's pretty hard when you go against a Lakers Shaq, but to at least limit him says a lot of things. And to guard Karl Malone while he was holding that series and Shaq at the same time and win that series, it says a lot. So he's great, hard-nosed big, great defender, great rebounder. My last one is Mark Mcgwire. I was thinking about putting Dennis Rodman here, but Dennis Rodman's best achievement on the Pistons was his defense and winning Most Improved Player of the Year, which meant a lot to him. And Dennis Rodman is a different player in the Pistons. He was more humble. He was a hustler. He was a grinder. He put his nose in the dirt. He didn't he didn't talk too much shit. That was more Isaiah and Bill Laimbeer's job, but he was great. He was and he ended up starting towards the end of the run. But Mark Mcgwire, they wouldn't have won the championships without him. He was fantastic in the Mavs, and he won 2 rings with the Pistons. And if they don't have him, Adrian Dantley couldn't have done it without Mark Mcgwire. So he had to make my list. And he's definitely one of the best players from the '80s. So that's my 4 for the Pistons.
The next thing I have just the Seattle Supersonics. So Mateo named 2 of the guys on my list too, and Ray Allen and Gary Payton. Ray Allen was good pretty much on every team he played on. Even when he was an old-ass man on the Heat, he made arguably one of the clutchest shots in NBA history. But Ray Allen on the Supersonics, that was definitely his glory days. If he had any help whatsoever, even if he was on the Supersonics for 1 more year or 2 more years, it could have been him and KD if he was, hurt for a year. But Ray Allen's probably the second best just supersonic of all time. But the greatest supersonic all time, without question, is the glove, Gary Payton. Like Mateo said, I think he was on 13 All-Star teams, 9 All-NBA defensive teams, Defensive Player of the Year, leads the franchise in about every major statistical category, led the team to the 96 finals, and him and Shawn Kemp were probably one of the most fun duos to watch in the 90s. And the next guy I have on my list is Shawn Kemp. Probably one of the more entertaining players to watch in the NBA this time. Ferocious dunker. Every once in a while on your Twitter feed, you'll pop up him dunking on that guy in the Warriors, pushing him to the ground and pointing at him and laughing at him and running back down the court. But all around, just a dog. Rebound, scores, did everything pretty much for the Supersonics and was the other reason why they went to the finals. And the last guy on my list is a guy named Jack Sikma. He was the best player on the Supersonics when they won the franchise's only title in 1979. Besides the point that these are the 4 best players in Seattle history, the NBA needs to return to Seattle. It's in a bunch of places that don't really deserve to have teams that have never won jack shit. And there's a team like the Supersonics where the fans want to have a team. They've won a championship. They've been to championships. If the Supersonics never left to Oklahoma City, I mean, their list would improve with guys Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Serge, fucking James Harden, Paul George, all could have been Supersonics too. But I think the NBA will return to Seattle, and hopefully that they do.
All right, next team on my list is extremely boring team because they were literally founded in 1995. So all the guys are going to be fairly recent. That is the Memphis Grizzlies. Like, these guys don't even really deserve to be, like, named on a list like this. But anyways, we got Mike Conley. Dude's a beast. All-time steal leader for the Grizzlies, even though they've only been around for, like, 25 years. But it is what it is. We got Zach Randolph. Marc Gasol, and Paul Gasol. A bunch of I don't want to say average because I think Paul Gasol and Marc Gasol.
Well, let's not forget you chose the Grizzlies.
I did. We also could have put Tony Allen here, who was, one of the better defenders like of all time. Dude was a beast, but he just no.
I mean, Paul Gasol and Marc Gasol both may have been better on the Grizzlies, like points wise, but they both won on other, like Pau with the Lakers and then Mark won with the Raptors.
Well, like, this team hasn't been around for long enough for even to be like.
But I mean, for a team that's only been around for 20 years or almost 30 years now, they did have a pretty good run, like the mid 2010s. I mean, they gave a lot of teams lots of run for their money when it was Conley, Tony Allen, Randolph,
Spurs one year.
I mean, they were a good team for a span of 5 or 6 years in a place, Memphis, that like would never ever in a million years sign a big free agent.
Right. Yeah.
I see Marc Gasol as like, or maybe Zach Randolph as like the face of that.
Yeah.
All those guys are like the face of that franchise. Like Mike Conley, Randolph. Like when you think of the Grizzlies, that's who you think of.
I mean, Conley's like an average player right now. We're naming him on an all-time NBA team list.
Yeah, well, the Grizzlies, but they did, to their credit, they did upset the Spurs first round in 2011. I just fact-checked that. Also just fact-check something else. I apologize to our fans. Clyde Drexler only won 1 ring on the Rockets. He was traded the following season. The Rockets won their 2nd ring. That's on me. So, Shane, your list is probably right now. As much as it hurts me to say that.
Yeah, I just feel like you gotta have Harden, man. I mean,
I think you have to have Harden too.
36, like 7.
I think Harden's a hell of a player, and I agree. And at all time, he could debatably might be over Clyde, but at the same time, I feel like success also says a lot. Like,
that ring is
all
huge.
the greats found a way to win. You know what I mean? So,
I mean,
maybe swap him for Elvin Hayes.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, to be honest. But yeah, I don't think Harden. I think Harden should be on there after reflecting. I think Elvin Hayes maybe could be swapped.
That is me.
Yeah.
Okay. My next team, I got the Jazz. I kind of had like a little bit of split here, so I'm going to stay on both. Darren Williams, Carlos Boozer. I mean, Carlos Boozer, he averaged like 19 points, shot over 50% in the 6 years with the Jazz. He also averaged like 11 rebounds. And he's right now top 5 in points and rebounds per game in Jazz history. I mean, then I added Darren Williams because Williams averaged 18 points a game and like 10 assists, and that's mainly because a nice pick and roll duo with Carlos Boozer. Within just like 5.5 years with the Jazz, he managed to make like top 10 in like 19 of their team's categories, the franchise categories. He also led them to 4 straight playoff appearances. So I felt like I had to put both of them in there because they both complement each other really well. My next one, I got Pete Maravich, or Pistol Pete. League's scoring title in 1976 to 1977, which was like 31 points a game. I mean, he was just a creative passer for the Jazz, as he led the Jazz in assists 4 out of his 5 years with the team. I mean, I felt like he made a major impact in their success. My next guy, I got Karl Malone, or the Mailman. He spent his whole career with the Jazz. He averaged around 25 points a game. 11 rebounds, 4 assists. He's first in points, field goals, free throws, rebounds. And he made it to the NBA Finals in 1997, 1998. Again, he is accompanied with my next guy, the main face of the Jazz franchise, John Stockton. He has 19 years with the Jazz. He's first in NBA history with assists percentage, and steals. He was an absolute floor general. In 1987, 1987 to 1996, he averaged about 15 points, 13 assists. And then in 1989, he averaged 14 assists per game. Just overall, the Jazz have had a really good shot of getting a point guard center duo for pick and rolls, and those are my guys.
Yeah, that's a good list.
I like it too. All right. My next team is the Atlanta Hawks. First guy may surprise you. It's Trae Young. I'm joking. First guy I got Bob Pettit. Got 26 points, 16 rebounds, 3 assists a game. Definitely an older player. He played around the creation of basketball. So, but for his time, he was one of the best. Rookie of the year, 2 MVPs, and then he made All-NBA first team 10 times. Next guy I got is Dominique Wilkins, one of the best small forwards of all time. I know Steve loves him. Averaged 26, 7, and 2. He was drafted by the Jazz, actually, which many people don't know, but he was traded to the Hawks right away. And his nickname is the Human Highlight Film. In 1986, he averaged 30 points a game, and he finished with just over 23,000 points. So very good scorer, 9-time All-Star. Next guy I got is a guy I sent for the Nuggets, Mutombo. Gave you 12, 13, and 3 blocks a game. By far the best shot blocker. That's what I meant to fucking say. Of all time. He won that Defensive Player of the Year in Denver in 95. Then when he went to the Hawks, he won the Defensive Player of the Year in back-to-back years of 97 and 98. Last guy I got is Lou Hudson. He wants another older player. The Hawks haven't really had much going on in their career. Lou Hudson, 22 a game, 5 boards, 3 assists. He was on the all-rookie team, and then made a bunch of all-star teams. So, I had to put him on there.
Good list, Tim. Good list.
Thank you.
I was going to have an aneurysm on the show if I didn't have Dominique, so I'm glad you did. Warriors. My next team is the Warriors. This is an interesting one because this is a team, unlike the other ones, that has mainly had recent success. If you look at the Warriors, my first guy I'm going to name is Wilt Chamberlain. Had a season on this team as well as he averaged 50 a game. Wilt Chamberlain probably could be on any all-time team. You could even argue for the Lakers if you wanted to. He just wasn't in his peak then. But like I was going to say, they were great right on the 70s for this with Wilt Chamberlain, late 60s, early 70s. And now you look in the 2010s and closer to now, they had a dynasty definitely go on when we were in high school. So the next guy who was ahead of that dynasty, Steph Curry, changed the game. And every guy that changes the game definitely deserves that recognition. When we were growing up, the three-point volume shooting is not what it's at now. That's why when you look at a guy like, let's say, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, Ray Allen wasn't taking 10 threes a game, and he was the best three-point shooter in the league. And he was probably taking closer to 6 or 7, maybe 8 sometimes. Now you look at teams now, your best three-point shooter is taking 10-plus threes a game. Curry's been doing that for almost his entire career now. He changed the game. He was an MVP, only the height of 6'3". Well, the year he averaged 23 a game, I don't think he deserved it, but the year he averaged 30, he definitely did. And Curry's kind of the headliner in the 50-40-90 club, which is you can't get much better than when you look at that's a very elite club for 50% from the field, 40 from 3, 90 from the free throw line. You're looking at guys like Steph Curry, Larry Bird. Like it's a very select few that can make that list. So he definitely deserves to be on here. Now, my next guy is only on here because he decided to make the biggest snake move in NBA history and decided to make basketball non-competitive for 3 years. Kevin Durant. KD deserves to be on here because KD is a beast. I think he could have won in OKC, to be honest with you. He's one game away from making the finals, but he did not. So he had to go to the Warriors, who were probably the greatest regular season team of all time. But at the end of the day, KD's a two-time Finals MVP, two-time champion now because he jumped ship, and he is unguardable. So that is all true, but he needed Steph to do it. Now, the next guy I was going to say was Klay Thompson, but I had to include someone from Run TMC. So I included Chris Mullin, and that was the best player in Run TMC. That's an 80s nickname, which I think is awesome. Tim Hardaway could have easily also been on here, but Chris Mullin was one of those guys where he was just kind of in Larry Bird's shadow as far as great shooters from the 80s. And the way they moved the ball really well. Like Chris Mullin definitely deserved his spot in the Dream Team. He kept the Warriors competitive in a very tough era, and he headlined that Run TMC team. I think he deserved to be on here. I think someone from that team had to be on my list, especially because I think he's just, as right now, he's a little bit better all-time player than Klay, but I think Klay can surpass him is what I think. But those are my four.
Yeah, so the next team I have on my list are the Spurs. The Spurs were they're like kind of what every NBA franchise wants to be, especially more recently. So their list is a lot of more recent guys. First off, you can't forget him, Tim Duncan, the big fundamental, probably the best power forward of all time, the head of the Spurs, just an all-around outstanding player. Even was still good when he was 40 years old and had a great head of hair, running up and down the court and winning his last championship when they beat the Heat and LeBron. The next guy on my list is the Admiral David Robinson. He was part of like the first run that the Spurs had in the early 2000s with Tim Duncan and Tony Parker and Manu. When Duncan, Parker, and Manu were all like babies in the NBA, Robinson was the guy. The Spurs probably could have have more titles, but because he went to Navy, he had to go do his like tour of service or whatever you have to do when you go to a military academy. So I think he came into the NBA later than he should have. It didn't play as much games in the NBA because of that. The next guy I have on my list is Tony Parker, who is the best point guard in Spurs history, and him and Tim Duncan are the face of the franchise when it comes to the Spurs. You can't have one without the other, I don't think. Even though he doesn't go down as like an all-time great like Tim Duncan does, if it wasn't for Tony Parker, the Spurs aren't winning 5 championships, and they're not regarded as one of the best franchises and having one of the best, long stretch of dominance in the NBA as they did. And the last guy on my list is George Gervin. He was the Spurs. He was the best player in the Spurs franchise until David Robinson came. He was their guy in the ABA that even kept them afloat as a franchise without them having to because a lot of NBA franchises crumbled back in those times. People might ask, where's Kawhi Leonard? Kawhi Leonard is definitely does not. He could be over the list above George Gervin, but if anyone else deserves to be on this list, it's Manu Ginobili. If you're talking about all-time Spurs, but I just wanted to have an older player because Kawhi, even though he did win 1 championship, Ginobili won 5, Parker 5, Duncan 5, and Kawhi Leonard left the Spurs. The Spurs didn't want him to leave. He forced his way out of San Antonio. So whereas talent-wise, he's an all-time Spur, I don't think he belongs accolades-wise on the all-time Spurs team.
I couldn't agree more. I'm really glad that was the list you had because Kawhi Leonard, you put him. Yes, he was very talented, but when they actually won the championship,
he won 1 title. He won. Yeah. The rest of these guys won 4 titles.
Yeah, even when they won, if Kawhi Leonard is on a different team in the league, they still probably win that championship. Yeah. Tim Duncan, and Tony Parker were pretty much. He won Finals MVP for guarding LeBron and slowing him down as LeBron proceeded to drop 28 a game. But he's not like if you put Kawhi on the Clippers, then they're not going to go win the championship. The Spurs probably still make it to the finals. So that's why I'm just going to be real. I agree with that list 100%.
All right. Next team on my list is the Pacers. First guy, the face of the Pacers, Reggie Miller. 18 seasons there. Dude was a lethal shooter. You got to have him on your Pacers list. Next guy I got is Rick Smits. Played there for 12 seasons. He was never a superstar, but he was always consistently good. He averaged 15 and 6 over those 12 years. Next guy I got Jermaine O'Neal. Dude was a beast. 6 playoffs, 6-time All-Star. Had to put him on my list too. And finally, a guy we're all familiar with, Paul George. And a guy I could have put on there is Danny Granger, but I didn't because I think that Paul George is a better pacer all time than he is.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think that's a good list. I mean, the Pacers, if Larry Bird had stayed in management, Paul George might have stayed because they were building the team there. They made some the runs of the Eastern Conference, but as far as an all-time team goes, they're not necessarily stacked at all.
All right. My last team, it's an insanely boring team. I'm only going to say two people. I got the Wizards. I think the only people that deserve to be on this list are Bradley Beal and John Wall. I have, like, Gilbert Arenas and, like, Wes Unseld. But, like, Gilbert Arenas, like, he spent a few good years in the Wizards, but then, you know, he has this whole trouble with it was like a gun. Yeah, that was ridiculous. And I was like, I mean, he does have some good accolades for the Wizards. He does average around 20 points, 6 assists per game, 3 All-Star appearances. But I mean, Bradley Beal and just John Wall, they dominated they just are clearly the faces of the Wizards, spending, I think, 8 seasons fully together. Bradley Beal, 2 All-Star appearances, 21 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists. I mean, this season without John Wall, he averages almost 31 points a game, 6 assists, 4 rebounds. I mean, as his numbers were increasing, I mean, the potential of him was going up. And then just John Wall. John Wall was just the face of the franchise for a good amount of years. I mean, he has his own song, which is pretty cool. 5-time All-Star, 19 points, 9 assists, 4 rebounds, 1.7 steals. He also All-NBA third team. He could have been Rookie of the Year, but then he was within that draft class with Blake Griffin. So, I mean, I just feel like those two are like the only people that should be on a Mount Rushmore. I mean, nobody else really made a big impact.
Yeah, I think one thing about John Wall is that John Wall, I think you could argue, is as big of a what if as Derrick Rose was, because before John Wall went down, I remember just being the Celtics fan I am, watching them play that 7-game series. John Wall was best player in the court at all times. Even when IT was up 30 a game, John Wall was averaging 25 and 12 before he goes down, and ever since then he's been injury ridden. And but that team was the top of the East, man. You know what I mean? So I think that's definitely, I agree with what you said so far.
All right, wait, go ahead.
I'll say one more. Even though Michael Jordan is a Bull and always will be a Bull, I looked at his seasons just like reading up on what he did on the Wizards. But he was an All-Star the 2 years he was on the Wizards, and he scored 25 points a game. And even though he was an old ass man on the Wizards and wasn't Michael Jordan, I mean, he's probably still one of the better players their franchise has ever had, which is crazy to think about.
See, I was gonna put him in there, but then you have to take into the fact that he spent 2 seasons out of his career, just he was just there just to be there.
Yeah.
So I
sell tickets.
Yeah, exactly. So I was gonna put him in there, but then I just felt that.
No, I know. I agree with your list. I mean, because the Wizards are one of those teams where it's my last team is a 2. They've been so many different teams in their franchise history, so it's hard to decide who goes who.
All right, my last team is the Toronto Raptors. First guy I have up here is Vince Carter, 23, 5, and 4. Made all-rookie first team. On the Raptors, he made an All-NBA second team and third team, 7-time All-Star, slam dunk champion. Next guy I have here is DeMar DeRozan, 4-time All-Star, averaged 24 and 3. He was an All-NBA second team and an All-NBA third team, 1 time in his career for both seasons. And then we know what happened to him. He's probably the most beloved star to ever come through Toronto. But then he got traded and everyone was sad. But this next guy won them that ring. Had to be on here. Kawhi, 27, 7, and 3 that season. One of the most impressive seasons, if you want to look at it from just a fan, just one season. He was an All-Star, won the ring, All-NBA second team, of course, because LeBron's going to be the first team, so it's hard to beat him out for the small forward, as well as Kevin Durant was first team that year. All-NBA defensive second team, Finals MVP, and then he did what he had to do, and he left. So, I mean, I had to put him on the Raptors. And this last guy, people might not be a fan of him on this. We can debate about it after. I had to put Kyle Lowry on here.
Before you finish, say your 4 names again.
You don't have Tracy McGrady on the
I was going to say Tracy McGrady.
He did. He averaged 11 points on the Raptors.
Oh.
People don't realize that. They just know Tracy McGrady was on the Raptors. If you look at his stats, he played there for, I believe, 3 seasons, averaged 11 points, unless I somehow read that wrong. And, yeah. So my last guy is Kyle Lowry. 18, 4, and 5 in 8 seasons on the Raptors. Him and DeMar are some of the most beloved players by that Toronto fan base. He's made 6 straight All-Star teams. He's got that ring. He was an All-NBA third team in 2016. And he's never made a defensive team, but if you know Kyle Lowry, he's going to at least give you a little effort on defense. So he's not a below-average defender. I'd actually call him average or a little above average. So.
I mean, Chris Bosh is in that mix, but
Chris Bosh. How'd you forget him?
Chris Bosh was close. I just like the fact that Lowry didn't leave. Chris Bosh left Toronto on his own. Lowry's been.
Steve, I completely forgot that Chris Bosh is like the best.
Chris Bosh didn't win anything. I valued Kyle Lowry's first off.
How can you have Kawhi Leonard on there? I understand he won a ring, but he played a Warriors team that had Draymond Green bringing the ball up in the last 3 games of the series. Chris Bosh is arguably one. I mean, he's definitely. I think he's the best Raptor of all time, if not for Kyle Lowry. Lowry, I respect him being on the all-time Raptors list, but Kawhi Leonard played there for a year.
As far as Raptors go, you could argue DeMar or Kawhi because DeMar was there for so long.
Yeah. But you have to have Chris Bosh on the all-time.
Chris Bosh was Kyle Lowry or Chris Bosh for me. I valued it as Kyle Lowry has came and he's never left. He won the ring, although it was Kawhi's team.
Yeah, all right.
18.
True. What are your 4 again? I just want to I missed the first
Vince
one.
Carter, DeMar DeRozan, Kawhi. And Kyle.
All right. Okay. All right.
Bosh is the greatest Raptor of all time.
Yeah, Bosh is. I think
Bosh has to be in the mix, but I
He
get
was
it.
my
Bosh is- I
fit.
think
He
Bosh
was my
has to be
fit.
on the
I
list.
understand, but you know what? He left for Miami. That if I was a
the
Raptors
Raptors
fan,
sucked and gave him no help. That's why LeBron left for Miami too, because the Cavs sucked and gave him no help.
And Kyle Lowry wasn't always on the Raptors, but that's
he
another
wasn't.
conversation.
I mean, he went there. He's been there for 8 seasons, 6 straight All-Star games, all that.
Undeserving All-Star games.
Yeah. All right. So
Well, 6 straight, I wouldn't call undeserving.
Wolves. All right. There were a couple years Rondo should have made it over him, but that's a whole other thing. Wolves. The Minnesota Timberwolves. So I'm gonna go with Teo and do the only 2 players because I love basketball. I really love, but NBA history is probably my favorite history among the sports. And Wally Szczynski should not be on a Mount Rushmore. If you average 15.6 a game and you don't win shit, you should not be on a Mount Rushmore. So I'm going to say my 2 guys. Number 1, which you could argue should be the only one, Kevin Garnett. This Mount Rushmore might just be him by himself on a mountain because what he did for the Timberwolves, no one else is going to do for a long time, including Karl-Anthony Towns, bum, overrated ass that cannot play defense. You look at Kevin Garnett, he's going to give you 25 and 12 a night while being the best defender on the floor and playing with more intensity than anybody else. He brought a sorry-ass Wolves team to the Western Conference Finals, and I had to do research to find out the second best player on that team, to be quite honest with you. So that team, I think this is my what if. You switch KG and Tim Duncan. I don't know if KG accomplishes anything less than Tim Duncan did because I think personally KG was a better individual player, but Tim Duncan was a better team player. That's just the way I look at it, but it can be argued. So that's pretty much Mount Rushmore. Honorable mention that could be on there, I guess. Kevin Love. The Cavs ruined Kevin Love. Let's establish that. Yeah. Kevin Love was a beast in Minnesota, so I'll give him that. They weren't that good of a team, but he got buckets. The walking double-double, set some records there. He had a 30-point, 30-rebound game. He was a bully. He was a bully that had a nice stroke, and then he went to the Cavs, and all he does is shoot threes now. So thank you, Steph Curry, for creating pussy ball. Thank you. So, yes, Kevin Love.
Got that ring, though.
Yeah, he got that ring. Yeah, he fucking sucked, and he averaged 6 points. Yeah, Kevin Love played horrible in that finals. The fact that he was on that team, if he wasn't on that team, the best thing he did in that entire finals was play good defense on Steph Curry in Game 7. And that's a fact because Kyrie completely outplayed the fuck out of him. And Kevin Love, you can look up a stats for that finals and he completely underperformed.
I remember in the last game,
Right.
the game 7, I think he had like 17 rebounds that game too.
Yeah,
The
he's a good
average-
team player for them. He just wasn't like
Yeah.
he wasn't Kevin
He was
Love.
like everyone thought when Kevin Love was going to the Cavs, he was going to be averaging 20 points and 20
Yeah.
rebounds again, but like realistically, like that wasn't going to happen.
That wasn't going to happen because he didn't play. He didn't play in the post enough, in my opinion.
I mean, I still think they of course got a good deal for him.
Yeah, Andrew Wiggins for Kevin Love.
I mean, Andrew Wiggins probably is performed a little better than Kevin Love did on the Cavs. But.
Well, maybe.
Yeah.
Anywho, horrible. Probably the worst all-time team. I have 2 teams, so I'm going to say the other one really quickly. I'm not going to say joke of an organization because there was a time, a long, long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, when they were good. But the New York Knicks. The main guy in this Mount Rushmore, in my opinion, is the big man from Georgetown, Patrick Ewing. 11-time All-Star, 7-time All-NBA. If the second best player on this team wasn't named John Starks, this team probably could have won a championship because of how good Ewing was. John Starks was the second best player on this team, and to other people's point, he cannot hold a candle to guards the NBA currently. Ewing, on the other hand, would be the best big in the league and would get Joel Embiid 40 a night, throwing his nuts in his face in the post. Now, Walt Frazier, all-time great, one half the duo that led to 2 rings, completely needs to be recognized. And the sad thing is, Knicks fans are so bad and such shitty fans, they probably don't know who Walt Frazier is. Another name that they definitely don't know, Willis Reed. Willis Reed created swag in the NBA. He had a chain in every game he played with a chain. So Jordan got it from him, just saying. But Willis Reed was sick, man. He was sick in the post. 5-time All-NBA, former MVP, 2-time Finals MVP when they won. Definitely deserves to be on here. My last guy who deserves to be on here for sure is our own Carmelo Anthony. Melo wasn't surrounded with enough talent, in my opinion, to necessarily make them contenders. Like, the best year he had was with Tyson Chandler, Kidd, Iman Shumpert, and JR. And when Iman Shumpert's your second leading scorer at times, you're going to struggle as an organization to win basketball games. So I think he definitely deserved to be on there because he averaged over 20 games every year he was on the Knicks. And multiple seasons, he's top 3 in scoring. So the Knicks those are 4 all-time great players. They have James Dolan running the show, and as long as he's running the show, they're not winning shit. So I feel bad for Stephen A because that's a sorry-ass organization.
Yeah, so the last team I have is the Hornets/Pelicans franchise, who are also – their history is mixed in with the Bobcats' history. It's like those 2 teams' history is like one big fucking mess, and it's impossible to figure out who played for what franchise at what time because they're all jumbled together. So I went with guys that strictly either played for the New Orleans Hornets or New Orleans Pelicans. So guys like Dell Curry, Larry Johnson, who is like, I guess, considered how athletic Zion is considered now. Like that's what he was like coming into the NBA. So all those kinds of guys aren't on the list. So, I mean, when you boil down to it, the Hornets, even though they were really good in the early 2000s, I should say really good, they were a solid team in like the mid to late 2000s with CP3. It's pretty much the 2 best players by far, CP3 and Anthony Davis, each respectively demanded their way out of New Orleans because the franchise wasn't giving them anything to, win with. CP3 is the franchise all-time leader in pretty much every stat, and then Anthony Davis would have been the franchise leader in every stat if he stuck around for longer. But 2 other guys, I'll throw their names in because they're also pretty big pieces. David West was a very good player in New Orleans with CP3, and then I think a guy that's heavily underrated in today's game is Drew Holiday, who is really like, if it wasn't for Anthony Davis, I mean, Drew Holiday, when they beat the Blazers in the playoffs a couple years ago, Drew Holiday heavily outplayed Damian Lillard in that whole series, and that's pretty much the reason why the Pelicans ended up winning that series. But, I mean, if I really want to get into it, I mean, Zion Williamson's probably like a top 5 player in this organization's history, and he hasn't even been there for a whole season yet. So, I mean, that's where the Pelicans and / Hornets are.
Yeah,
but I think they're building something pretty nice in New Orleans.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it's sad when because I was thinking of that team too. I'm like, who the hell's going to be on that one? And one of the players I was constantly mentioned was Ryan Anderson. So that shows, 18 a game from White's waste of space. Ryan Anderson shows how bad that organization was. So I agree with you.
All right, my last team was definitely the easiest team for me to do. That's the Miami Heat. I'm just gonna name the 4 guys because I think they're pretty obvious. You guys can tell me if you disagree with any of them or if you think there is a close fifth. That's Shaq, LeBron, Wade, and Alonzo Mourning. I think maybe close as Bosch or Hardaway, but I think that core four is self-explanatory right there.
Dion.
Yeah, that's solid.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
I think one of the guys in like that franchise, even though he's never like done anything, but like a guy like that franchise owes a lot to is Haslam. He's been there for his whole career. And even though he's never been like a great player, like I think he means a lot to the fans and the franchise because he's stuck around for so long. I mean, he's been through it all. I think he won the title with D-Wade and Shaq, and then he was there when they were average with D-Wade, and then he won again when LeBron showed up. So
Yeah.
I agree with like your –
No, that's a good point, Gib. He was like the Nick Collison. So what Nick
yeah,
Collison
he's like the Nick
under-
Collison of the
Yeah.
Miami Heat.
Haslam
But like not a bum ass like Nick Collison and like never did
Collison
anything.
had his time on Kansas against Syracuse, but yeah.
Yeah, at Kansas. But like I feel like Haslam, like at least in 2K, he was always on the Heat starting lineup in like when they had LeBron and D Wade. So like you knew who Haslam was, whereas like Nick Collison kind of just patted KD on the ass when he came off the floor for when the Thunder were good.
You're not wrong. Yeah, it's true.
All right. That'll probably do it. Obviously the Lakers and the Celtics are probably going to lead the way on Mount Rushmore. But teams like the Bucks and teams like the Thunder, maybe, I don't know. Teams like that are getting up there. But we'll see ya. We'll be back tomorrow with a mystery episode. We won't tell you what it is yet because we're still deciding on it. But anything to say before I end it?
Thank you, Teo, for coming on, man.
Yeah,
Happy
shout out
belated
to
Thank you,
birthday.
Teo.
Happy late birthday.
This is very fun.
Shane, anything to say?
Happy birthday, Mateo.
Thank you.
Coming out, man.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was just writing all this stuff down. I mean, just doing some research and then like having the time to like talk to with you guys. is
You
kind
were a
of
little
fun.
bit too.
Huh?
You were a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it is. Like it is a good time because like it gives everyone something to do when you're just sitting around doing nothing all day.
Yeah. I mean, I took like my last test of the semester and then I was just like, what should I do?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
this could be like a free hour and a half of just researching like
Yeah.
enjoyable stuff.
Researching something like that you wouldn't normally like
Yeah.
go research. That's what it is.
I would be playing like I'd be playing like MLB right now, but instead
Yeah.
I was like looking at the history of the NBA and it was pretty enjoyable. Like I was pretty proud to see some of those things I saw. So
I think Steve might be the only person who didn't really have to research this topic too much.
I Googled a couple of things, so this was definitely one of my more enjoyable episodes. I wanted to argue guys more, but I think you guys did a pretty good job. Just at least in my opinion, I'm no expert. I just like NBA, but I think we did a good job. I think there could have been a lot of dumb lists, and we avoided those. That's
Very true.
Bosch. That's kind of tough. Bosch.
Yeah, okay. We'll talk about that after I end this. All right. We'll be back tomorrow. So see you guys.